So Krystal and Kyle Kulinski interviewed Kat Abughazaleh on their show. And if you haven't subscribed to their channels for some reason yet, definitely check out Kyle's channel, Secular Talk, and Krystal's channel, Breaking Points. I put the links to their channels in the description of this video. So Kat has been a political commentator for some time now, and she recently announced that she's running for Congress in her district in Illinois. I believe that she has an awesome, fresh take on politics that I think you guys should hear. So let's watch some of the key moments from their interview, and then we'll break it down.
Well, here is Kat's intro video.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk are dismantling our country piece by piece. And so many Democrats seem content to just sit back and let them. So I say it's time to drop the excuses and grow a fucking spine. I'm Kat Abughazaleh, and I'm running for Congress in Illinois' 9th district. Unfortunately, this party has become one where you have to look to the exceptions for real leadership, as the majority work from an outdated playbook. We need a makeover, which means we need a vision that's bigger than what we've been told is possible. There is absolutely no reason you shouldn't be able to afford housing, groceries, and healthcare with some money left over. Families should have free childcare, Social Security should be expanded, and our inalienable rights shouldn't be dependent on who's in power. And while current Democratic leadership might be fine cowering to Trump, I'm not. I've spent my entire career reporting on the far right and being attacked by them as a result. In fact, just a few months ago, Elon Musk's lawyers deposed me here in Chicago to ask about my mean tweets. Look, I thought comedy was legal again. This is all to say, I'm not scared of standing up to these people. I know how they think, and I know how to beat them. But my campaign itself is going to be different too, because I don't want to wait a year to help people. We're focused on meeting constituent needs with one simple rule. What if we didn't suck?
What if Democrats didn't suck? What if the sky wasn't blue? Being an establishment Democrat is synonymous with sucking, literally. The Democratic Party is the reason why Trump has won 2 elections. The Democratic Party was not willing to prop up a true populist candidate named Bernie Sanders. In 2016 or 2020, they rigged the primaries in favor of centrists. So the day that Democrats stop making it easy for Republicans to win presidential elections is the day they'll stop sucking.
Didn't suck. My campaign and I would rather spend our money on book drives and clothing exchanges and public events than fancy fundraisers for rich donors.
That's huge. This is one of the main points that I wanted to touch on. Kat is using much of her campaign donations to directly support her constituents now. Give them things that they need now. Instead of promising, if you elect me, then I will do this for you. If you elect me, then I'll help you this way or that way. No, she's doing it now. We never see this.
I also want my campaign to be as transparent as possible. That's why I'll be posting regular videos about the costs and steps of running for office. We all deserve better. We deserve human rights and financial freedom and a party that stands up to authoritarians. We deserve to thrive, not just survive. And I plan to fight for those ideals both on the campaign trail and in Congress. If you want to know more about me and what I believe, you can go to catforillinois.com. I do need to mention that campaigns cost money and ask you to contribute what you can. But I promise your donation will not be wasted on old, ineffective tactics. No spammy guilt trip texts, no focus groups to test my...
Bruh. Last summer, I signed up for like one email list where I wanted to get updates on Kamala Harris's campaign through email, like directly from her campaign. So I signed up for one thing. I ended up getting well over 100 texts through the election, dozens and dozens of emails, maybe hundreds of emails. I'm glad to see that she's realized that spamming people's text and emails actually turns voters off.
It's time to challenge the status quo, and if our leaders won't do it, we will. I'm Kat Abughazaleh, and I'm running for Congress because it's time for Democrats to do more.
Very different with the Democratic base. They feel betrayed by some of their favorite media hosts. They feel betrayed by a lot of Democratic leadership. They feel like they are not meeting the moment whatsoever. So I'd love to, hear your thoughts on that, and also just what has the reaction been to that launch video? Because I think you hit so many points that are key sources of frustration among just like normie Dem voters.
Yeah, I think that we're all sick of it. People are angry. And that's kind of why I ran, because I just got sick of hoping that someone would do something. And it's really comforting to think that there's like some figure that's going to come in and save all of us. But we're not in a movie. We are what we've got. And I have ideas of how we can do politics differently. And so I'm running for office. And the response has reflected exactly what I have been feeling. People have been really excited. We raised over $400,000 in our first 2 weeks. We have over 11,000 different individual contributors. We're taking zero corporate cash.
If the Democrats want to be taken seriously in 2028, and really in the midterms next year, every single elected Democrat should stop taking corporate money, should stop taking billionaire money. Full stop.
And we have over 1,000 volunteer signups. Our volunteer Discord is bumping. It's great. Even people that, when I'm out in the community, for example, at the Hands Off rally in Algonquin, which is in the more western part of the district.
If for some reason you haven't heard of these nationwide Hands Off rallies, maybe your head's been in the sand, or maybe you've been staying in your doomsday bunker waiting for Donald Trump to get us into a nuclear war with Iran. Essentially, once per month, sometimes twice per month, there's these massive anti-Trump protests at thousands of locations nationwide. In every state, several cities in every state are having these giant rallies, these giant protests. So my point is that you should be going to these protests, whether you're progressive, moderate, conservative, if you're anti-Trump. Everyone should be joining hands in the opposition.
When I talked to people and introduced myself, and I asked what they cared about and why they were out there, and they asked why I was running, and I would say because I don't think Democrats are doing enough. And I didn't talk to a single person that voted either Trump or Harris in the last election that didn't feel reassured by that. Every single person that was out there in a traditionally red district out in McHenry County was pissed off and ready for new leadership. It's not just about resisting Trump and resisting the far right, which is my specialty as a researcher and reporter on the far right, as I've been doing all this work on the far right, my video explainers, which have reached millions of people over the last few years. But it's not just about that. It's not just about the authoritarian emergency. Democrats have been screwing up for a long time. They've had this is the party that got the New Deal and the Civil Rights Act. And instead, over the past few decades, they've been serving this watered down corporatist vision. And people don't want that. They want something bold, something that actually cares about them and not just big money donors. One of my top issues is labeled basic existence. And it's the idea that you should be able to afford housing, healthcare, and groceries with money left over, both to save and to spend. And that shouldn't be a radical idea, but it is in this country right now. And that should be the lowest bar we have.
Jan Schakowsky is she's a Democrat, she's current representative of the district. And she's, not where we all are, but she's a pretty solid, progressive vote. I believe she supports Medicare for All, Green New Deal. What is your view of her and her representation of the seat? And if she does get in, I think she hasn't decided whether she's going to run for re-election or not. What are some of the things that you would challenge her on?
So this wasn't a referendum on Jan Schakowsky in particular. Schakowsky has been one of the most progressive members of Congress for her whole career. She has fought for a lot of things that you and I care about, and she has been doing it consistently. I mean, she stood against the Iraq War when it was happening. But this is a district that has been represented by two people since 1965, and It hasn't had a competitive primary since 1998 when Schakowsky first won, about 5 months before I was born. The people bring up her age. She's 80. This is, I believe, her 14th, 15th term. I'm not sure it's necessarily about the age thing as it is that a lot of our...
Bro, it's totally about the age thing. She's 80. Kat is 26. I'm not saying you can't be effective at 80 years old. I mean, look at Bernie Sanders. The dude's drawing the biggest crowds of his career at 83 years old and galvanizing more crowds than The Rock at WrestleMania. The point is, Jan Schakowsky specifically is not being aggressive enough as a force of opposition to the Trump administration. She might have progressive ideals. She might support the Green New Deal. She might support Medicare for All. But when it comes down to opposing the Trump administration, she falls flat. It might be due to her age. There might be several reasons. But Kat, at 26 years old, is able to more effectively oppose and put more energy and time into opposing the Trump administration. And that's what we need. We need strong, coherent opposition on one hand and unwavering progressive policies on the other. And it sounds like her congresswoman is only doing one of those things right now.
They just don't share the experiences that many of their constituents have, and that's not their fault. The average age of Congress is 58 and the average American is 38. And it's not your fault that you age. All of us do. But most of our members of Congress didn't have school shooter drills growing up. Many of their children didn't either. They don't know, they haven't worried about out-of-pocket medical costs in decades. They own their homes. And these are things that if you don't experience them, or you aren't close and consistently talking with and immersed in communities that experience this, it becomes more of a statistic and less of a matter of governance. Yoshikowski has done a lot of votes. There are some that I would have done differently, especially in the past 2 years. But a lot of votes that I do agree with. But I would say her role in leadership, our Democratic leaders, if they're doing the votes, that's great. But they also need to be holding their colleagues accountable. They need to be pushing for a vision beyond just their individual self.
I get the sense that on the Democratic side, there's this idea of like, we have a hierarchy, we have seniority, we have rules. When it's your turn, it's your turn. And then on the Republican side, it's like, hey, can you get eyeballs on you? Can you make the most noise? Can you push our agenda? And if you can, then you get put to the front of the line and you get to be like the face of the party in many respects. It's why we all know who Lauren Boebert is and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these people are.
That's a pretty good point. The most outrageous, the loudest, boisterous voices in the Republican Party are put to the front of the line and get the most attention and are most known amongst Republican voters. And that method, quite frankly, is effective to some extent. The more eyeballs that are shined on you, the more media coverage you can get, for better or for worse, is more opportunity to broadcast the narrative that you're trying to craft. And unfortunately for the Democrats, like for example, with the leader of the House Oversight Committee, Jerry Connolly, he beat out AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to become the leader of the House Oversight Committee, even though AOC has millions more followers on social media, gets millions more views on her videos, is way more welcomed and well perceived by the general public, and especially amongst the left. Democrats don't really have a winning strategy. Like Kyle said, leadership in the Democratic Party is determined not by who is the best communicator and who's the most effective politician, but rather by a set of unwritten rules that says you need to wait your turn. We need to have this decorum. You need to pay your dues to the corporate Democratic Union for at least 25 or 30 years before you can put your name in the hat for running for president or running for any large office. And like Kat referenced a few minutes ago, the strategies that the Democratic Party has used are severely outdated.
Is it time for Democrats to drop the civility, decorum, bipartisanship, hierarchy, it's your turn approach, the rules-based approach, and to be more like in it for the fight, in it because values matter and the policies matter?
Oh my God, 100%. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. Running for office is so inaccessible to the vast majority of Americans. That's why I'm doing a video series of what it's like to run for Congress. This is the paperwork you need to file. These are the steps you need to take. When our FEC report comes out later this month, I'm going to be going line item by line item of what it costs to set up a campaign.
Have you ever heard of something like this? Have you ever seen, I'm sure maybe it's happened before, have you ever heard of a congressperson or a person running for Congress who's willing to step so far out of the norm to show her constituents that she is relatable, that she is just a person? Now, of course, I'm not ageist. I'm not against older people for running for office. If I had it my way, I would choose Bernie to run for president in 2028, even though he's going to be like 87 at that point. My point here is that Kat is 26 years old. She's part of Gen Z, and she's been able to leverage her technological savviness, her video making skills, her communication skills, and it's gotten her this far at only 26. Those are the skills that are missing in many of the 80-year-olds that are in our Congress.
But like, this decorum is part of the reason we're here in the first place. When Al Green stood up to Trump and then him and the 10 others that walked out were lectured by Hakeem Jeffries. Crazy. Al Green was censured by members in the party.
Crazy.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing? We're not playing here. You spent the last 8 years talking about how Trump is a threat to democracy, because he is. I agree with you on that. Yep. I agree that he wants to be a despot. I did a 1-hour explainer on white Christian nationalism, the history of it, and its ties to Project 2025. Like, I am very equipped on this. I agree. But now you're acting like, well, we can work together. Well, we can all wear pink outfits. No, it's ridiculous. Anyone who has an idea of how they want to do politics differently should be able to run for office.
One of the things I wanted to get from you, which is in line with this is there's been this sort of debate about like, well, do we call him a fascist and do we lean
Yes.
into that?
Isn't that
or
debate
do we
over
talk
now?
about do we talk about, you know, economic populism and Medicare for all and like a living wage? And I feel like one of the things that you have really understood deeply from your work as a researcher and analyst is like, you know, these things go together. It's not an either or kind of a situation. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a really unique, like you have a depth of knowledge on that that's really important and really unique.
Fear is like a very potent human reaction. It is the thing at the very core of our brainstem. And authoritarians exploit that. When things get worse, and oftentimes authoritarians will try to make things worse first, and I guess then make them even worse. But when things get worse, people want something to depend on. And there's no real easy, sexy, one-step solution to any systemic issue, but people like Trump pretend there is. And so by acknowledging people's problems and then giving any solution, rather than essentially like gaslighting and saying everything's fine, he's gotten a lot of support that way. And the thing is that when people are scared, when their material needs aren't being met, it's a lot easier to get them to believe in conspiracy theories. It's a lot easier to get them to hate. It's a lot easier to make them believe things they would never have believed if they didn't have to worry about one $500 emergency expense.
So they didn't post the full interview, so I didn't get to react to the whole thing. But from what I've seen, I think Kat is going to be a problem, like a good problem, a problem for any person that ever tries to run against her for any office, because she's so relatable. She's making a video series on how to run for office, how to file the paperwork. She's going to fully disclose all of her financials. She's currently using campaign donations to pay for needs in her community and her constituency. She's not taking any corporate or any corrupt money. She advocates for true progressive, populist policies like Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and many, many more. She's very well spoken and she researches topics before she speaks on them. But I guess the only downside to her is she kind of looks like she could star in a Disney show next week. What's that actress's name from Jessie, like the Disney show Jessie or anything? Peyton List, that's it. She looks just like her. She gives off the same vibes. I went to her channel, watched several of her videos, and she doesn't speak on a topic that she's not well researched in. So yeah, she's going to be an absolute problem for the Republican Party moving forward. This is what we want from our politicians. We want them to be transparent. We want them to be relatable. We want them to look like us, sound like us, not take corrupt money, have great policy ideas. Is that too much to ask?